Hello.
We're live.
All right, we are live. So, good almost afternoon, Minnebar15. Welcome to the Tech.MN podcast live. My name is Alex Shaw, and I'm the content manager for Tech.MN, and I have the privilege, and I say that sincerely, of interviewing the two people that you are actually here to see today. Now, 383 days ago, I did the math. These two intrepid sailors of the digital airwaves launched the Tech.MN podcast, and now, 58 episodes later, they've landed at Minnebar and taking a look back at the road that has brought them here. We have the co-founder and CEO of SureSwift Capital, Kevin McArdle, and the community editor of Tech.MN, Jac Stark. Welcome to the live stream, everyone. How's it going?
Going really good, except I'm getting a lot of echo from you, Alex. I don't know if you can hear it.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because you and Jack are in the same room, but I anticipate that might be tough for folks to listen to for however long we're talking.
Let's see.
Our sound engineer says it's weird. And he's suggesting Jack or Alex move. Maybe Jack, do you want to just pop into one of the phone booths? We'll cover you while Jack moves. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing well. You know,
that sounds way better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There we go. Yes, absolutely.
This is why we don't do the podcast live, Alex.
That is
a good point. Too many disasters that could be had.
You know, I've always said this. I think my grandpa even always said this. It's not a live stream unless you have some technical issues. So.
Your grandpa said that?
Yeah. In like the 30s, you know, when they were doing live streams, it was a big deal. It was a big
deal.
My
mother also tells me I have a face for podcasting. So this live stream on the mini bars is a little intimidating.
No, I think it's going to be wonderful. So just as Jack is getting into the little podcast booth here, we'll call it a podcast booth, just to give everybody an idea of what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to do kind of a Tech.MN rundown split into four phases. I teased the fourth. We're going to kind of go through the eras of Tech.MN, as it were, starting with phase 1, April 2019 to November 2019, the really early days. Phase 2, November 2019 to March 2020. I think you can all understand why we stopped at March 2020. Phase 3, March 2020 till now. And phase 4, now into the future. So we have a lot to discuss. We are probably going to run a little bit over the time slot here. Minibar has so generously offered us a little bit of a looser time schedule. So we're grateful for that. And we have a lot to talk about. Now, if you are watching and you have any questions for Jack or Kevin, please drop them in the chat. We will be seeing them. And when we're kind of near wrapping things up, we will go back and address any questions that you may have straight from the source themselves. Jac Stark.
I'm back.
There we go.
What did I miss?
Not much.
No. We talked about rambling.
And I would say if people have questions, throw them in, and it doesn't have to wait till the end. Let's just see if we can be nimble and answer questions as they come. Can't promise we'll answer every question, but let's make it a conversation.
All right. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Phase 1, April 2019 to November 2019. Now, just a very brief history lesson of Tech.MN for everybody watching. Tech.MN was started in 2019. Nope. Already screwed up. Tech.MN was started in 2009 by Jeff Pesic and Mike Bollinger of Livefront. It was then purchased by SureSwift Capital, which is Kevin's company, the co-founder and CEO, from Jeff in April of that same year, 2019. So right away, off the bat, this one is directed mostly at Kevin. Tech.MN, if anybody goes to the SureSwift Capital website and looks at the portfolio companies, there's a lot of SaaS companies there, mostly SaaS companies, overwhelmingly SaaS companies. Tech.MN is definitely a different animal from the rest of the portfolio. So why the interest in purchasing Tech.MN, and why was it important to you to add this product to the overall SureSwift portfolio?
Well, I want to start with a little bit of the personal side of my story. So I'm relatively new to the Twin Cities. I moved here in the summer of 2017. skip the whole story, but my wife grew up here, so we moved here to be close to family. And right away, I started trying to get integrated into the tech and entrepreneurial community here, because that's something I've always cared deeply about and want to try to have an impact wherever I can. So I was showing up at Mini Demo, I was attending Minnebar, trying to get plugged into the beta events and startup week events and so on and so forth, and really started to fall in love with this tech community, even being a newcomer. And I observed a couple of things that made me feel like the Tech.MN business was a business in transition, which we can talk more about. But I realized Jeff, one of the co-founders, was actually spending more time in California than here. And then at some point, Mike, his co-founder, decided to leave. And so having purchased a lot of businesses and looked at hundreds more than we've even purchased, I just seemed like there's a bit of a transition going on here. So I called Jeff and just said, or I sent him an email and just said, if you're ever open to selling, I'd be open to buying. And the reason, to answer your question, Alex, why, when it doesn't necessarily fit with the profile of SureSwift, we're good at running online businesses. Yes, it's mostly software, but we know how to run an online business. We have content sites that are not quite as complex as Tech.MN, but we have a very large team of people that know how to do that. And having lived here for a while, and knowing, although new to the cities, me and my family are planted here for the foreseeable future, and wanting to have a meaningful impact on the tech community, not just show up at the events, I thought this might be a way for me to have an impact on the tech community by acquiring a business in transition and doing what I can to help it grow.
Excellent. Now, people who have been ingrained in the tech community here in Minnesota for a while, kind of, excuse me, back around those 2018, 2019 days, probably know the name Jeff Pesek for a number of reasons, not the least of which was some controversy that he created in, I believe it was fall of 2018, when he posted a poll on Tech.MN, the old Tech.MN, it should be said, and the poll said, should Minnesota techies be treated differently based on their appearance? Now, this obviously ignores the reality of the world that we live in, where people are treated differently based on their appearance. Specifically, if we're looking at tech, we're talking about women and people of color, minorities. This was clearly a turning point in Tech.MN's early history that somewhat eroded some of the public trust in the site, in the brand. When you were examining buying Tech.MN, Kevin, how aware were you of that controversy that had gone on, and did it influence how you were approaching the company when you were talking to Jeff about purchasing it?
Well, let's try not to be too overly sensitive. Like it pissed a lot of people off. Let's just say what it actually was, and rightly so. I was aware that it was going on. I actually saw the morning it was posted. I saw the discussion on Twitter in real time. It's where I get most of my news, is from Twitter. And so yeah, I was aware. I wasn't aware to the degree that it went. But when I first saw Jeff put it on Twitter, my immediate reaction was like, this is a mistake. This is not going to go well. And then when people sort of called him out on it, he just doubled down on his position, and I guess to try to present both sides of the story, I think Jeff was reacting to a Blacks in Tech conference that was either coming or had just happened, saying, well, why is there a Blacks in Tech conference? Shouldn't it just be a tech conference? And not defending that position, I just want to acknowledge, like, something with what I know of what sparked the discussion. I wasn't aware until we started looking at acquiring the business. I knew, like, this is a bad idea. That is a bad take that I completely disagree with. It wasn't until we started looking into the business that it actually was a bad business decision as well. Because, and then later I saw the news story that was about it. Carol Levin did a story. And I realized like sponsors pulled their sponsorship of the business, and many attribute directly to that event. And Jeff was not like, that wasn't a one-time controversial statement from Jeff. He was had very strong opinions, and he used his platform to state those opinions in the strongest of words. So a series of things, I think, led to sponsors pulling their sponsorship. So yeah, that's certainly something you take into account when evaluating a business. Like if a business is growing and super, everything's kind of up and to the right, which I realize is backwards based on the camera, that's a good thing, and that puts higher value on a business. And if a business is struggling and not growing, that puts a lower value on the business. At the end of the day, I thought TECH.MN, I believed, and I still believe TECH.MN could have a healthier, stronger future with SureSwift owning it than with, at this time, by now, it was just Jeff. Mike had left by the time we started talking about it. And so, we can't get into like how we finalized the negotiations or the price paid or any of that stuff. That's confidential. But yes, it was certainly not a surprise to me that the controversy was there and that Jeff had pissed a lot of people off, and certainly something I considered when deciding to acquire the business.
Now we kind of move into the era of Jac. We're getting close to the Jac hire. You were hired on soon after SureSwift acquired the brand, TECH.MN. And I know you were aware of the controversy as well, kind of going into the position and going into the role of community manager, doing the day-to-day operational stuff and really kind of taking the reins of the business from a day-to-day perspective. How do you feel, this is for both of you, but Jac, I want you to be involved as well. How do you feel TECH.MN has gone to make right on the mistakes that were made by that previous owner? Or, what steps have been taken specifically to kind of show the community that we are not what Jeff was?
That's a really good question. When we started working on TECH.MN after it was purchased, we really decided to make it our own. We wanted to move forward with having more of a community focus and not so much a competitive breaking news focus. And so we've done that through telling the story of people in the community. And for us, that's like the first step. I would say that it's what any basic decent human being would do. It's just normal to tell the stories of Black technologists and entrepreneurs right along the side of everybody else. But I still feel like we have a ways to go and in giving the voice to those community members as well. So I think that we've started in the right direction. We still have a long ways to go, but I think we're moving in the right way.
And Kevin, as the co-founder of SureSwift and the CEO, someone who has to juggle an entire portfolio's worth of business decisions, I know from talking to you and just from being around you that you're very passionate about the tech community here and that you like to be involved with TECH.MN specifically, and that's something that I'm personally really grateful for. How, for you, who has to maintain a little bit of distance from the day-to-day to not get in the weeds of everything and kind of be that big picture thinker, how have you seen the brand kind of evolve, and what have you wanted? What did you want the brand to be and the product to be after it was taken on by SureSwift instead of what it was, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I wanted and still want TECH.MN to be a force for good in this community, however possible. So yes, that includes celebrating the diversity of the community. It includes telling more and different stories of the community. I think like as a group, I think we can be a place where the community comes together to celebrate our own successes and talk about failures in an open, honest way that can help other people learn from it. And I want TECH.MN to be a megaphone for everybody outside of the Minnesota tech community to understand how amazing it is here and what we're working on to bring talent, investment, interest, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, we announced I don't remember if you said this, Alex, but we announced the acquisition the night before Minnebar in 2019, and it got a lot of attention, almost exclusively positive attention. And people had a lot of questions about kind of what's the plan. And I said, I don't know, we're going to figure out the plan, but what do you think the plan should be? And so I did a lot of listening to everybody I knew in the community and, people that I didn't. And there was no Jac, so it was just me trying to, keep the trains running for a while. Jac joined and I said, here's my vision, but, you need to manage the community. So, develop your own vision, which Jac did. And we've been executing on that. And I've, been able to remove myself from the day-to-day because the two of you do such a great job of running things. But like you said, before I ever got involved in TECH.MN, this is an interest and a passion of mine to, support the tech community, contribute to the tech community, support entrepreneurs whenever I can. So I would be spending time on things like this, even if it wasn't part of my business. So it's sort of just like a really nice, coming together of my personal life and my business to be able to work on TECH.MN.
Right. And, as someone who's created content for the site and continues to create content for the site, I think we have made a conscious effort to really broaden the scope of things that we cover and the types of people that we spotlight and champion on Tech.MN. I think we've done a better job, but there's no finish line, and there's no mission accomplished sign that we can hang up and shoot fireworks off and be done with it. So it's an ongoing process. It's something that we continue to work on and learn about every single day. We have conversations all about it all the time. And I'm at least confident that we're moving in the right direction and doing things to hopefully rebuild some of that trust that was lost by Jeff in those moments, and build something, like you said, Kevin, that's a net positive for the community and helps grow the community that we're all a part of and want to see thrive, I guess.
Yeah,
so,
can I have one last thing, Alex, before we move on? I made a decision to not make any declarative statements about here's how things are going to be different. Maybe because I'm from Missouri, the show me state, I thought it would be better to just be different and let people notice. And kind of back to your question of, I'm a little bit removed than the two of you working, all day, every day. And people have noticed. And so you're right, it's never a checked job done, but over time, lots and lots of people have messaged me directly saying, Kevin, we notice things are very different. We notice what you're doing. We believe that it is good. Please do it. Please keep doing it. Everybody from strangers that I've never met to, well-known folks in the local community that are, well-respected and have a voice of their own. And so that's rewarding for me, just to know that people have noticed there's a different direction. And I get a lot of, encouragement, and just have a lot of gratitude from people kind of coming along the journey with us.
Right. So Jac was hired. We steered the ship in the right direction. The ship was going. I came on and ruined things for a while, and then things got back on course. And then the world was turned upside down in March when coronavirus started, in big air quotes there. I think everybody remembers when all of that went down, the early days of the really intense lockdowns when we couldn't leave our homes and it was only going outside to go for walks, and everybody that was in an office suddenly wasn't in an office. SureSwift, it should be said, had a little bit of a leg up, I think, because SureSwift is a remote first company before any of that. So it really made for us, the transition to working from home was pretty simple, but we know that for countless others, it was an upending experience, a world-changing experience. So for both of you, from a business perspective, looking at the site and looking at how things were going to go, what were your initial reactions when things began to shut down in March? I guess from a personal perspective as well, because I think that's important. I think that colors everything that we do in our lives. So from a personal perspective and a professional perspective, what were some of your initial thoughts that you remember having when those dominoes started to fall and we started to see okay, things are definitely going to be different going forward?
Well, I'll start, and then Jack, you chime in. My first thought, because Tech.MN is a portfolio company of a much larger portfolio and a much larger company. My first thought, we have like you said, we're not only remote first, but a worldwide workforce. So we had people on our team that were personally impacted by COVID before America really kind of woke up and had that, second week of March moment. So my first, obviously personally, I was worried about my family, both in my house and around the country. I was worried about our team, just wanted to make sure everybody was safe and felt just okay living their life, let alone doing their job. And we did have some, little bit of business struggles for the portfolio, but in general, we're very blessed to not have to lay anybody off. We paused hiring for a little bit, but we've opened that back up. So compared to most many businesses in the world, we had it pretty lucky as a whole for SureSwift. Now for Tech.MN, there's never a good time for a worldwide pandemic, followed by the murder of George Floyd and really the biggest dumpster fire of a year that I've ever experienced personally. But it's especially bad timing when you've been working for 6 months on rebranding and relaunching a website and launching new revenue generating models. So Jack, why don't you talk about the timing and the impact for Tech.MN specifically?
Yes, so we launched our new website design and brand the same week that everything started to close down. So it was a little bit rattling at that time because they're like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And one of the biggest things that we noticed was the change in our content. Some of the articles that we were posting that were doing the best were about layoffs in town. And kudos to the companies that were very transparent and sending out press releases and being honest and candid about what they had to do. But there was a lot more going on that we didn't know about. And it'd be interesting to see a full diagnostic of the Twin Cities and Minnesota of what has happened since then. But as far as Tech.MN, we did see some difficulties in our revenue slowing down. Sponsors were a little bit afraid to move forward with things like that. Everybody just kind of put the world on pause. And so it forced us to be a little bit on pause as well. And that gave us some time to slow down and really think about what we want Tech.MN to be, what our content should be, what our readers want, who our readers are. So since then, things have picked up. I think people have started seeing what their future are and moving towards that. And that has helped us as well.
Yeah, I definitely think there was a period of time where everybody was just uncertain of what anything was going to be going forward, and everything from personal lives to professional lives to businesses was just kind of like a huge question mark because no one had faced anything like this specifically before. So I think there was a lot of early decisions made that needed to be made. But we've also seen, like you mentioned, Jack, we've also seen some bounce back. Some companies that had to do pretty significant layoffs in those early days start hiring back, start bringing back people that they had to lay off in the spring. So I think there is a little bit of a rubber band going back. But clearly, it was a weird time. And Jack, you specifically mentioned writing stories about layoffs and about companies having trouble and everything. And that was kind of a just from a content creation perspective, and that's the type of site Tech.MN is. It was a little bit of a push and pull to get. There were a couple of ones that we kind of scooped, to use like a newsy term. That we got up first, and they did really well, and it was like, okay, go team. Well, we just talked about like 25 people getting laid off, and their lives getting completely changed, and it's this really like bittersweet feeling. So it was a very weird time for everyone in the world, clearly, obviously.
also, you wrote an article about the community pulling together and all of the things that companies and individuals were doing for people that were impacted by the shutdowns, by COVID. And that article did just as well.
That is very true. That was very heartening to see.
Well, we also, I think, gave people free job postings for a while so we could try to connect job seekers with hiring, because some companies were still hiring. So I think, like everybody, I think we just sort of looked like, what can we do to try to help this situation, which is, limited. But yeah, I was really proud of the two of you and the others that kind of support Tech.MN from the company, sort of rallying together to just kind of make the best of a really horrible situation. And even though our impact might have been a drop in the ocean, at least we worked hard on that drop to see what we could do.
Sure. And Kevin and Jack mentioned the big branding redesign that we did around that time. We launched it the week of COVID. Sweet timing. Kevin specifically, I was interested then, and I still am interested. And this kind of goes back to a little bit of you having to remain kind of like a sky level of everything to make sure that you're seeing the entire playing field and not getting too much in the weeds. When something like this is going on in a company of the portfolio, in a SureSwift company, especially something where Tech.MN, it got redesigned pretty much from the ground up. Like almost nothing was kept in terms of the branding, in terms of the feel, in terms of the tone. What is your role in something like that? We have weekly meetings. You come to them and you give your input. But when something is going through like a major shift like that, what's your role in it, and how do you kind of balance that as a CEO who needs to remain kind of a step back and not get too much in the weeds?
It's hard to do because I have been accused in the past of being a little bit of a control freak. Don't laugh so hard, Jack.
I was going to say, definitely by nobody on this call.
No. And I think I have over time been able to, continue to step back, which I know I, need to continue to do. But by, first Jack and then you, Alex, stepping forward and, taking the reins and being, willing and able to lead makes it easier for me to step back. So, to put a finer point on it, it would have gone a lot worse if I had tried to rebrand everything in the first 3 months of owning Tech.MN, because I certainly have my opinions of what the brand could and should be, but it's one person's opinion, and I'm like the new guy here in the Twin Cities. So it was intentional, like take some time and talk to people in the community, get their perspectives on Tech.MN, do the customer research. From the beginning, Jack's been a great sort of alternative voice in like, we don't disagree on a lot of stuff, but we also don't come at things from the same perspective, if that makes sense. So as we're going through the branding exercise, I tried to just listen more than I talked and let Jack really like lead the conversation, because she was connecting with members and users and other folks in the community more frequently than I. And so, yeah, I more and more my role is like listen, try to knock obstacles out of the way and just try not to get in the way of what the two of you are doing on behalf of and we should say there's a lot of other writers and contributors, and our podcast guests have been a huge part of like any success that we've had. So more and more I just sort of see my role as like facilitate and try to stay out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. The redesign started before I came on board. I came on board pretty much the beginning of December of last year, which feels like 15 years ago. I don't even know.
Yeah.
So a lot of the design, a lot of the, we worked with Object, right, Jack? Object here in town to help us in the branding and the design direction that we wanted to go. A lot of that was set in stone before I came along. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, in kind of those early days of deciding what the new Tech.MN would be, did it take shape how you envisioned it in your mind, and kind of like what were some of the points that you really wanted to nail down to change it from the old Tech.MN into this kind of new beast, a friendly beast, but a beast?
Yeah, I don't think that I had a vision of what I wanted it to look like. So when we worked with Object, I think they ended up nailing it. We relied heavily on our core values, which is something that we put together through a program called EOS. And we were able to work with Object to take those core values and what we were, our history, and where we wanted to move forward, and translate that into a brand and a story. So it's more than just the colors and the font. It's about ingenuity. I can never say that word. Ingenuity and moving forward and community. And so by the time we were done with it, I love it. And our next step is really working through the user experience of it and continuing to loop in the community so that it truly can be a place that is for them, that they have input, in a place that they feel where they belong and they feel comfortable.
Excellent. And we've got a comment from Scott Forbes. The Twin Cities have a long history in computer tech. I think it can be leveraged in moving to the future. And he dropped a website in there, mncomputinghistory.com. And I popped it on here, and we will take a deeper dive on that. But I invite anybody to go on that, mncomputinghistory.com. Thanks, Scott, for sharing that. It has a very cool little matrixy binary GIF in the top that I am really into. So I can't legally, I don't think I can say let's bring it in for a landing, because I'll get sued by the Tech.MN podcast. But that's your trademark. Let's bring it in for a tumble. How about phase 4? Now to the future. A lot of things have changed in the past year on a global scale, but we're going to bring it down to Tech.MN here. Let's talk about the business model of tech media. It's harder to make money from a content product than it is a software product, a SaaS product, for sure. I think that's something that we can all agree on here. Let's talk about the business specifically of Tech.MN, the model that we're kind of going for, the model that was kind of set in place, and the model that we're really driving home right now. So, Jack, I kind of want to throw it to you, actually. Let's talk about membership, sponsorship, and a job board, which are kind of the 3 pillars of what we're working with at Tech.MN.
Yeah, so when Kevin brought me on, he told me that he doesn't necessarily want to make money from this. He wants to break even, but he wants it to be something that the tech community can rally around. So how we make money to support it is through sponsorships, through our new membership, and then through our job board postings. And so people get involved and tune in with us in those ways. It has not been an easy road for us. I think there are so many different options that people can choose to sponsor, to become a member of. And so we are really grateful for the people that do choose us. And our biggest goal in moving forward with this is just packing on the value and making sure that people won't want to say no. We hear no a lot, and that's fine. We're not for everybody, but we want to be able to have people consider not saying no, because what we offer is so valuable. And so that's kind of what we're moving forward in our business model.
Yeah, and one other pillar of the business model before March is events. So we historically, Tech.MN has done both public and private events, or invite-only events, I guess I should say. And that was, we had kind of worked toward creating more events. And that will be part of our business model going forward. It's just, not really at the top of the agenda right now.
Right. And I'm wondering if you can talk about some of those struggles a little bit more, Jack or Kevin, that you've seen kind of, Jack, that you've seen from kind of the ground level, and Kevin, that you've seen kind of from a step back, because we do run an event called Fun. I don't think I can say the actual
Don't
name
say
of
it.
Yeah, we'll get kicked off. It's blank up nights. Rhymes with a build animal that quacks. And that's all about kind of turning failure into fuel, kind of removing the stigma from failure and kind of recognizing that it's all part of the process in anything in life, really, but specifically what we're talking to founders and their businesses. So I'm wondering if you guys can comment on a little bit more of kind of the struggles of developing this revenue business model that we're working with now, and kind of like how you felt through that process.
Yeah, I can start with that. I think when we first started, a lot of people were still hesitant from the past of Tech.MN. They wanted to see that change, and I felt like we needed to earn people investing in us, and slowly people have. It's picked up. As Kevin mentioned earlier, we have people tell us that we're doing a great job. But those early days, it was tough. Neither of us are technologists, and Kevin was new to Minnesota. I was new to the tech community, so it took a lot of learning about who people were, what was going on in tech, what did we do really well, and what do we need to work on. So that's definitely helped.
Yeah, and I just again back to the timing. There were people that specifically told me, I don't want my logo on the old site. So when you flip it over, let's have a conversation. Just because there were the history and the baggage, and I totally understand that. And so, we rebrand, we launched the new site, and then like the worst timing ever to ask people for money, whether it's membership or sponsorship or posting paid job positions, et cetera. But I do think what we've created, especially through membership, is really outstanding. It's it's packed full of value. So yes, you pay $120 a year, but you're going to get way more than $120 of value from that membership. And I think I'm looking at the tech community here. I'm one of those people that I've said before, I guess I sponsor Minnestar. I'm a community member for Minnestar because I believe in what they're doing. I believe that the mission is awesome. They produce great events. I get value from it, so why wouldn't I give them money once a year? Same thing for Twin Cities Startup Week. I always pay for a VIP membership, and it's not because I need another hoodie, though I love their hoodies. It's because I believe in what they're doing, and I want to support it so they can continue doing more and more of it. And my hope is that people will look at Tech.MN as another one of those things and say, I support what they're doing as an individual. I want them to keep doing it, and therefore I'm going to be a member and help them continue to do more of what they're doing. And just like with Startup Week and with the Minnestar events, I know I'm going to get value in return through great content, great events, more podcasts, discounts from other members, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of the vision behind membership and where we hope that it goes.
Yeah, you mentioned that timing of launching a new brand when COVID was turning everything upside down, and that was difficult. But I think it's really important to underline also and we've mentioned the community, but I just want to give a shout out, and I think I speak for all of us on here, that what we've seen the community pull off during this time has been really, really something special and really, really awesome. And no matter how anything goes, no matter how many technical issues anything had or has, I don't know if some people are in the same room and it's like crazy echoey for the first 5 minutes, who knows? I think just doing things during this time is a huge win, just a huge W. So, Minibar and Twin Cities Startup Week, which was a full month of digital events, all that stuff that was pulled off, like shout out to those people, because we know personally, because we've talked to a bunch of them, that there was just countless hours and long, long, long days put into them. So props to everyone who's doing anything during this time, because it's not easy. All right. Few minutes left. I have a few more questions for you guys, and then we will let everybody go grab lunch. Am I hungry? Maybe. All right. The Tech.MN podcast. 58 episodes, 383 days ago or something like that. Let's talk about your favorite guests and some of your favorite episodes, or people to know about. How about you just each give a couple episodes or a couple guests that, if people haven't gone back and listened to the archives of the podcast, those are good ones to start with. Jac, you're muted.
Dang it. I'll go first. So I just want to start by saying that the podcast was one of the first things that we did. And a little story, I started Tech.MN in June of 2019. And a couple weeks after I started, my mom passed away. And it was devastating for me because she's somebody that I talked to every single day. And so it was a big life change. And the first project when I came back from that was working on the podcast. And I never thought I would ever find myself on a podcast. I'm more of a behind the scenes person, but hearing the stories of people in the community has been healing. It is work for us, but I find myself being enthralled when talking to these people because they're tech people, but they're so vulnerable and they share their life stories with us, and they've just been very welcoming to us. So I wanted to say that there's so many episodes that it's really hard to pick just a couple. One of my favorites was Melissa Colsing, and I've said this one before, because she was so raw in her interview. She had a terrible 2019, and I felt like I really related to her on that level. And she just sat there and she talked so eloquently to it. And that's a really good one to go back and listen to. Another one is Janessa White. She was at the time a junior developer, and I think she's been promoted up and gotten more experience, but it was her first podcast ever. And she was just so easy to talk to. She was a natural at it. And it was just lovely hearing her view of the tech community from being somebody who had just graduated from a boot camp and had gone through a job search and trying to break into tech. So those are two that I would shout out.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is hard to pick just a few, and we did go over a number during the 50th episode when Casey Allen interviewed Jac and I. In general, I have been really pleasantly surprised at, it's not necessarily the headline people that are that you don't need a CEO or a repeat founder to make a great episode. And that from the beginning, Jac and I discussed, but then decided we're going to tell the stories of the entire technology community here in the Twin Cities, because I think a lot of podcasts here or anywhere focus on the person at the top of the org chart or the founder. And yes, we've had a lot of founders on, and there are a lot of interesting stories, but there are really interesting stories and interesting people throughout the community. And so I've been, it was intentional, so it wasn't really a surprise, but it's been gratifying how some of our most interesting episodes are people that wouldn't have the opportunity to tell their story. But I think it's that much more relevant to the entire community, because if you think about how many people are out there that are junior developers that can relate to Janessa's story, there's thousands, right? And there are way fewer people that can relate to the story of a two-time tech founder. And the other one of the, I wanted to do the podcast because I knew it would be a great way to tell the stories of the tech community here, especially outside of here. And it's really interesting to see how many people that aren't in Minnesota download the podcast regularly and listen regularly, including the Obamas, which is really flattering. We've talked about that before. But it's also like the dirty little secret is like, it's fun for me to just get to meet these people, and Jac too, I'm sure, but like just recently, a couple of weeks ago, we got to hang and just shoot the breeze with Nancy Lyons for over an hour. And like, she's a really cool lady that I didn't know her story, and now I do. And so I feel lucky that I do. And on down, again, you get worried about not naming everybody, but like, I've gotten to meet so many interesting people in this community, and then they'll introduce me to somebody else interesting in the community. So again, as sort of the new guy, it was a a bit of a cheat code to get even more ingrained in the community and meet some really interesting people.
Fantastic. We are coming to the end of our live stream here. I have one more question. This is aimed at both of you. You can answer it in however you feel, however comfortable you feel. What is next? And it's a grand question, my friend. What is next?
Lunch.
In Minnesota. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, well, other than lunch, what is next in Minnesota Tech? Jack.
We've been doing this virtual thing since you started. You should know about the microphone.
When I had my interview for TECH.MN with Kevin, he started going on and on about South by Southwest and how we need something like that here. And this year has been kind of a fail for that, but he's still talking about it. And so
South by Southwest back when it was still cool.
Yeah.
And before it turned into just a giant corporate trade show.
Important to note.
Yeah.
So we've talked about that within our team. We've talked about that with community members who have similar thoughts, and that we think that's what's next for Minnesota Tech is a festival where everything here can be celebrated, ideas can be shared, people can be connected. So stay tuned.
Yeah,
what a tease.
I do believe that we will pull that off in a different way. It should be said, like Minnebar, I love. It's one of my favorite days of the year. Startup Week is one of my favorite weeks of the year. The vision is for something different, complementary. So stay tuned for that. I think more broadly, I hear people talking about and I've been lucky to get to know, like we've mentioned Mike Bollinger, I've been lucky to get to know him. And another person that comes to mind is Jeff Lynn. And I was in his office, Jeff Lynn, the CEO of Bust Out, his office in the North Loop. And he was telling me that he moved in 10 years ago and there was nothing there. Nancy Lyons talking about the North Loop when there were still people squatting in warehouses. And now as the new guy, I'm like, well, this is sort of like one of the epicenters of the tech scene in the Twin Cities. And it was nothing 10 years ago. And I try to imagine 10 years from now, what things might look like here as we see companies that are just starting out now will emerge to be like the next new big thing. Like there is a next Jamf that, for those that don't know, Jamf just went public and it's one of the bigger success stories of the last 15 years, not discounting the history. Thank you, Scott Forbes, for that comment. Those companies are just being built right now, and I'm super excited to see, all of those, hopefully all those companies have great success. And I think, another way I look at it is like people look at Austin now as like a real, epicenter for, startups and tech in the United States. And nobody would have predicted that 10 years ago, except for the people that were living in Austin and were watching it emerge. And I believe we're at one of those moments now where like 10 years from now, people will look at the Twin Cities, specifically Minnesota more broadly, and be like, whoa, what happened? Minnesota came out of nowhere and is all of a sudden this epicenter for technology and startups. And people like the three of us and a lot of the people listening to this will be like, well, yeah, we saw that coming. Thank you for coming along for the ride. And thank you for waking up to what's happening here. But I firmly believe that Minnesota and the Twin Cities will be looked at as one of the top 5 tech and startup ecosystems in the country, very soon. I don't think it'll take 10 years.
Definitely. People will say, do you remember when Kevin, Jack, and Alex weren't massively famous? And we'll sit in our ivory towers and say no. All right, we have come to the conclusion of the live Tech.MN podcast. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm going to throw some plugs in here because y'all know that's coming. Please go to Tech.MN. We are producing content that covers a wide range of stuff. We do some news as well to keep you up to date on things. We have a weekly newsletter called The Circuit, which you can sign up. It's a fun time, folks. It's a good time for everyone. Our membership is live. It is revamped. It is awesome. There's a big become a member button on the top of the site that you can click and easily do that. Subscribe to the Tech.MN podcast on whatever podcatcher. Is that the thing that people still say? Whatever podcatcher? Probably not. Yeah. I'm cool. I'm hip. Subscribe to the podcast. All right, folks. And however you get it.
And hey, give us a rating or a review, please. That's what all the podcast people say is rate and review my podcast. So I feel like we should say that, which I just did. But seriously, I love giving shout outs to the people who give reviews, particularly if they happen to be 5-star reviews. So you can go ahead and plug your company along in the rating and the review, but let us know what you think.
It's funny how those 5 stars always get the shout outs, huh? Anyway, thank you so much for watching today. It is officially lunchtime. And thank you to Minibar and Ministar for having us on. Yes, huge round of applause.
Good job, Minnebar team.
Yep. Awesome event. That's still going on for a few more days, I believe, right? Thursday and Saturday?
Yep.
I don't know what day it is. Yep. So thank you so much, Kevin and Jack. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for being on. And we will see each other probably in about 45 seconds because we're in the same.
Thanks,
Alex.